3.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 9 of Between the Lanes. I'm Ralph.
And I'm Ron.
Today we got a very special guest lined up from across the pond.
International guest.
Yep, and we are very anxious to get to him. So let's go ahead and get our race announcements and race results out of the way so we can bring him in.
So what do you want first, race results or race announcements?
Yeah, we'll do race results first.
All right, race results. Last weekend, the Triangle Slot Racing Association raced at Hobby Max, and in the NASCAR class, Mike Parker was first, followed by Nick Brantley and Guy Spalding. And in the LMP class, it was the same three guys in the same finishing spot. So it was Mike, Nick, and Guy again. In GTP, Nick Brantley was the winner. Mike Parker was second, and Guy Spalding was third. Penn, Ohio opened their series at Fast Tracks in Fremont, Ohio. In the stock car class on the oval, Dan Ebert was first, followed by Aaron and Steve Kepp. Can-Am was on the 95-foot American Bank Black with Greg Fox winning. George Katakis second and Steve Plosnick third. F1 had Greg Fox winning again with Gil Paddocky second and Dave the Shadow Smurka in third. Then there was the go ahead.
I said 15B.
15B. So then there was the Northeast Retro Racing at Bristol, Connecticut at 1010 Raceway. And the Coops race, Keith Libby was TQ in the winner, followed by Eric Gherkin and Gary Clinton Jr. They were going to race F1, but I guess they had some kind of computer lap counter issues. So there was no race that I could find, and I was told that everybody in the A main received 42 points. So I don't know if the whole field got 42 points, but definitely the top 8 got 42 points.
I haven't seen Eric Gherkin race in a while, so it's good to see him back.
Yeah, he would. Yeah, him and Weaver and some of them guys kind of take the summertime off a little bit. So, but now it's October. Then we had North versus South, or the Rebel Series as it's called now, down at Concord, North Carolina. Dirt late model. Bobby Beachman won with Walker second, Shane Parent third. LMP was Walker first, Bobby second, Shane third. Truck, Cadillac was your winner, Robbie Deese, followed by George Spry and Shane Parent in third for the third time of the day. And then NASCAR, it was Walker, Bobby, and Robbie Deese in third. And Great Lakes Retro was at Real Speed Raceway in Fort Wayne. In Can-Am, I was the winner, followed by Dale Wilson and Lonnie Batts. LMP had Lonnie Batts winning over Zach in the last few seconds of the race, and Dale Wilson was third. F1, we had Zach Holly winning for his first ever, I think, retro race win. He won some local races, but this was like a first series. Wow. Mike Holly was third, and PJ Baltz from Illinois was third. And then GTP, I won with Tim Batts in second and Lonnie Batts third. Tim and Lonnie are father and son, with Tim being the son.
Right.
I raced with Lonnie years ago, so like in the mid to late 80s, and I don't remember Tim coming around, and he would have been a little boy, but
okay.
So that's
cool.
That's all the race results that I have for this week.
Okay, how about the upcoming? What have we got going on here this coming weekend?
Oh, this coming weekend is a very busy weekend. You've got Penn Jersey at Bloom Raceway. You've got the Sano, of course, at Chicagoland Raceway. You've got the American Womp Racing Association at Hobby Max in Durham, North Carolina. You've got the ISRA World starting on Saturday, and that'll be an all week long next week. Then we've got both the hard body series going on. You got JP Performance Series at the track in South Bend, and the B&E Crosstown Challenge at Mid-America,
right,
in Naperville, Illinois. So,
did you mention the Sano?
I mentioned the Sano, number 11.
Yeah.
On October 14th, we got FNRS, Flexi National Racing Series, at Tri-State Raceway in Middletown, Ohio. The Mid-South Slot Car Racing Association will be at Archdale. NorCal will be at Slot Car Raceway in Rohnert Park. And then October 21st, we got Great Lakes Retro in the Midwest Slot Car Series combination race at Thaser Raceway in South Bend. You've got the American Womp Racing Association in Archdale, North Carolina. And you've got the Hillbilly Howl at Slot Cars R Us in White House, Tennessee, which that's one of the bigger wing car races of the year. So,
yep.
And just some notes about the ISRA Worlds. Me and our special guest was talking about this pre-show a little bit. The production race, which is flexi chassis, handout Group 12 motors, handout tires, handout bodies. There's 72 teams, and they're two-man teams, so that's 154 drivers entered for that.
Wow.
For that race. So in the Euro classes, F1, 132nd, 124th, you've got anywhere from 122 to 125 drivers. I think one class was 122, one class is 123, and the other class 125 drivers are entered. So, and that's closed entries. I mean, that's a full up deal. So,
yeah,
the race really isn't open to everybody. I mean, there's a process you have to go through to be eligible for that race, and kind of a tough thing to get into. If you're not, you just can't like walk in and race.
Right.
So. And there's a waiting list for people that not really no shows, but they register back in June, and there's always a waiting list for guys who may at the last minute cancel or whatever. So a full week of racing and racers in Sulmona, Italy.
Yeah, it's always fun to see all the pictures they post from over there.
Yeah, and Patrick Skeen's been doing a lot of videos, posting them on Facebook of practice days, and it's kind of neat the last few days how you just kind of watch the building or the room just fill up with more and more and more people.
Right, yeah.
So,
right.
Yeah, some guys have been there already a week. So, is that your phone?
Odd.
There it went away.
Okay. All right, so you want to go ahead and bring the special guest on?
Yes, I think it's time to bring our special guest on. So,
okay, all right. Well, without any further ado, we want to welcome George Kimber to the show.
Hi, George.
How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm fine. In drizzly little old England.
It's drizzly Indiana right now, or stormy Indiana.
Thanks for coming on with us. We appreciate you taking the time.
It's a pleasure. I would much prefer to have been in Italy, racing in the ISRA Worlds, and I think I raced, I don't know, maybe 20 or more international events over my career. But, I do, every time it comes around and I watch the videos like you guys, and I miss the impact of the whole of the thing. It's just an incredible experience to live on the edge for a week or more.
Right.
It's,
so
you're talking 21 who has never been to one of these events, you're talking 17-hour days of being at the box, working on the cars, on the track, marshalling, and then you go off and have a few beers and a meal somewhere, and you get to bed about 2 or 3 in the morning, then you're up at 6 and you're ready for the next day. And that is unfortunately what I could not do now.
Well, yeah,
it's impossible to actually have the mentals, and I'm pretty tough mentally, but I couldn't cope with. And now the thing is, we've got these warm-up races, official and unofficial. People have had access to this track for 6 months or more, and the amount of gear you're going to need, and the amount of combinations you're going to be trying in that time is amazing. It's okay for the Italian guys. They've been there. And of course, the Brits have been over, the Czechs have been over. So it's going to be, in a way, a neutral race because so many people have had access. Maybe the drivers in the US will be disadvantaged slightly on this occasion. But in general terms, it is a fantastic event, and hard to believe, where we started. Like I started in 1980 in Italy, and maybe there was 4 or 5 nations represented. maybe about 35 drivers. And we've come a long, long way to, as you said before, absolutely an incredible amount of people want to race at this level. It really is amazing.
Well, and you bring up how it's an advantage to the Italians and the Czechs and, you know, maybe a disadvantage to the Americans. But last year, the Americans kind of had the advantage with the race being here and all the races here. But
yeah.
But no Americans won any races last year. So,
well, because unfortunately or fortunately for the Czechs,
right.
They still absolutely dominate in every respect. I mean, Red Czech hadn't raced for quite a lot of years, and then he goes to the States and wins. Now, Botkins is an extra special driver as well. They won the warm-up races. I keep on calling him Il Bandito. That's what I christened the guy, going back to when I was racing. And it's his home track really. And Trujillo didn't do as well as I thought he would do in the warm-up. So it'd be interesting to see whether he invests more and spends more time. But he's not the kind of guy who wants to lose.
No.
His sensational Brazilian adventure, where he won all four, of course, never ever done in the history to win all four races, but he did it. Yeah, so it's great. Something to look forward to.
Okay, so where did it all begin for George Kimber?
Yeah.
Well, it all began when I walked past a little toy shop in my hometown in the northeast of England, where I live, near a new place called Newcastle. And I saw these little tin plate racing cars going round a track, a figure-of-8 track. And something clicked in me. You know, I can go back to my father. My father was unusual for a native of the northeast, although he was actually from the south. But he used to take me out in his car every week. He was car mad. And he was a barber like I've been a barber. And he was a barber for 70 years. But in his shop, we had the house next to the shop. So when I was a tiny boy, I was going into the shop, sitting down, listening to my father, listening to the customers, looking at all these strange fellows that came in. And he had a diagnostic clinic, really. That's what we'd have to call it. It was, the guy would come and say, well, you know, my car's not firing right. This is not right. And he would leave the haircut and go out to see this guy's car and check it over. And then maybe he would get around to the back garage behind the building where his barbershop was, and he would sort things out, especially when he had staff later in his years. So I was brought up from a tiny boy in this atmosphere. And but every weekend, he always had a car. He didn't drink at all. He had a car, and he would take me out, and we shared our early life together. I would go to particularly motorcycle events. He was involved with a local motorcycle club, and he was a scrutineer. And now and again, he would take me to car races as well, up in Scotland, places like that.
So for Americans, a scrutineer is a tech director.
Right.
Yeah, right, okay, right. So really, this ski electric tin plate thing, just, I don't know, I played on it a couple of times when I'd be 8 or 9 years old, and I pleaded with my father to get a ski electric set. And it actually, for some reason, because we weren't poor, it took me till 1961 and the very first plastic ski electric cars came out. And I came down, I sort of knew I was going to get this set. I think I had a peek look in one of the wardrobes and found it, but I didn't say anything to my parents. And I went down, and it was nowhere to be seen. Couldn't believe that, you know, I had all this build up to this ski electric set, and I couldn't find it. And then I thought, hang on, maybe it could be in the shop, because the door from my house led into the shop. And there was all set up on this table. Just a very simple design. And within 2 hours, the batteries had gone. And it was Christmas Day, no way to get new batteries. So
right.
my dad said, oh, hang on, we've got the battery charger. We'll use that. And actually, it worked. And it was fine. And that's how I powered my slot cars. Probably from there, I started buying plastic bodies to replace the ones I had and putting motors in. And so there was this sort of technical thing, very early glimpses of my technical skills coming in. And then about I'd be about 13, maybe 14, a guy told me about a slot car club about 20 miles from where I lived. And so I went up there and continued to go up there for 3 years. It was near a place called Blythe in Northumberland. And so that was a 40-mile trip on a bus. And I had my car box, and when I walked out of the house, all the kids in the street would start laughing at me and cheering at me. My life really, in terms of people's thoughts on racing or playing with, a lot of people call it playing with toy cars. And so that was the very early start of it all. And what I don't know, but certainly that Blythe experience, there was an engineer, he was a metalwork teacher, and he built absolutely fabulous slot cars. And I looked at his car and I thought, you know, I have a go. It took me a huge amount to the point where I could build a car like him. These were 1/32nd scale, because for the viewers out there, Britain is totally different to America in terms of how it's set up. We have all private clubs. We don't have raceways. Or I think there's one raceway called Millstream in the south of England near Southampton, and that's sponsored by a millionaire guy. I don't think it would survive on its own. But other than that, these are all private clubs. So the majority of the racing is 1/32nd scale. And that's where my early days were, in 1/32nd scale racing. Even today, this day, we have over 50 clubs affiliated to British Slot Car Racing Association. So we have a healthy, very healthy program.
Right.
So I have a question before we. Did you ever race at? Was it Wonderland?
No, I was 200 or 300 miles. Well, 300 miles.
Okay.
So I did go down and race in a couple of meetings. One was at Nordic Models right in Southall in London, and I knew a guy called Trevor Kraut, who did the GT bodies, which are very, very good 1/32nd scale vacuum formed Alexan bodies, and they were very good. And I won an event when I was about 15-year-old down there, and then within a few months, I went down to an event called the National ISRA, Electric Car Racing Association, what was formerly called the association in Britain. And they had a national junior national championships. And I took a 300-mile trip each way on public transport at 15 years old to attend this meeting. And I don't think they could actually understand what I was talking about, because people from the natives of my area where I live have a Scandinavian-based accent. Okay. It's derived from Scandinavia because obviously we have close links with the Nordic countries. And so they talk very quickly, and they have a very regional accent. So I would go down there. I think there was one guy from the Northeast who knew me, a famous slot racer, and he sort of guided me, and I won this event. I borrowed a car to go there with. I did all my early days. I borrowed cars. No one would lend me a car in the end because I beat them, But I had nothing. I couldn't probably change a braid, really, But I had the basic talent there. And then the following year, I won the full-blown Brescia or ISRA Nats. So this was an open title. It's 16 years old, and I'm still the youngest racer ever to win a national title. It's 16 years old.
It's awesome.
I was set on my way then.
And this was about what year was this?
That would be 1966.
Okay.
In the national juniors, I won in 60, 65, and then 66. But I beat some very good racers. Ian Jensen was one of them, who went on to be a top British 1/32nd racer. And I really look back with pride on that very first win. But what made me want to enter that event is really hard to work out. It's a very competitive streak in me, I suppose.
So you're racing in 1966, winning these national titles. were you aware of how big slot car racing was in the United States at that time?
Well, the model car. There was a Model Cars magazine in England,
Right.
which came out really the start of 1964, I think it was, and there was references to racing all over the world, international racing. Kalamazoo seems to come in my mind as they were pioneers, like maybe even 24-hour racing, I think.
Yeah, Kalamazoo's about 3 hours from me or so, and that's I think the first club or something here in the United States from the 1961 or 62. Or maybe the first commercial track maybe is what it was.
Yeah. But of course in Britain we had early slot racing, which was called rail racing. We had rail racing in the 50s, and the guy called Charlie Fitzpatrick and Walkden Fisher, who did a lot of fantastic articles and drawings on the model car, the early editions of Model Car magazine. So, but Britain was primarily 1/32 scale. You know, there was we had Barry McGee. Barry McGee was probably our most famous 1/24 racer.
Right.
In the Tottenham days, but I missed that altogether. I wasn't around it really. I was probably studying to be a hairdresser at the time.
Gotcha.
I was getting my career together. You know, I'd met my dear lady, and we got married when I was 20, and we had our first son at 21. So they were the times when it changed. My wife has hated slot racing throughout my whole career. Never ever wanted to be involved in any way. Didn't even ask me. I could come home and win a national championship, and she wouldn't ask me.
But she's a very charming lady. I mean,
she is a very charming lady, and like all of these ladies are very charming. If you're doing what they want you to do, it's very good.
But no, I had the pleasure of meeting her in 1997. She was very charming, very pleasant.
Yeah. I mean, she's a lovely host, beautiful cook, good wife, good mother. The boys. I've got 3 boys, and one of them was a slot racer, Michael, the youngest boy. He was a national champion as well. So we've done pretty well, really. But to get back to the fundamentals of the American system, the British system, because we have private clubs, the tracks tend to be smaller. Right. And that's why we ended up with 1/32 in smaller 4-lane tracks. But now, over a period of the last 10 years, we've acquired possibly maybe there's 6 or 7 8-lane tracks now in the UK. Most of them in the hands of private clubs, but working and doing well. So we have 50 clubs, and we have 60 million. You have 3 million population, you have 120 raceways. It's pretty much similar,
Yeah.
If you take, for example, sorry.
How are because I've had the pleasure of racing with you a couple times here in the States. So how are the tracks different in the States compared to where you are, as far as just the style of tracks? Or like, I know you mentioned that we maybe have a little bit longer tracks. Do your tracks tend to be as banked as ours?
In general, no. I mean, I was racing last night at Burtley in the northeast of England on R81. It's quite a well-publicised 6-lane track. And I think it's based on a mnemonic or something like that, with the banking, 40-foot straight into a banking, and then a 180 back left, into a wiggle, and then come back round straight and underneath the straight above, and then into a donut, and then back on. So it's very, very simple track. But that's unusual. That is an unusual track. We are more, the Italians and the Brits have always raced on flat tracks.
Right.
And certainly the technical skills you acquire from that are greater than the car itself. When you have a very fast car, anyone who does wing racing, I reckon, is very good at Eurosport 24 because of the preparation work required on the car. The car is 90%, and when the car's right, you can drive it. well within yourself, and it makes a big difference to, how you perform. But 30-second racing, some of the Italian tracks were unbelievable. It would take you a year to get to know them.
Right.
They were so complicated, but they were fabulous drivers. I mean, a guy called Maresca, Sergio Maresca, was truly an astonishing racer. First time I ever saw anybody feathering with his trigger.
Yep.
Driving of the car, because remember, the Brits and the Italians both raced with their thumb. I had an East controller, it was called, a very sophisticated thing, but it was basically a plunger, and you press down, and the same responses you get with the trigger. But the trigger, you could actually, in Maresca, use 2 fingers on the trigger, and he actually feathered through the corners. It's a bit like Senna putting his brakes on, accelerating through the corners in Formula One.
Right.
Very similar style, and it was very unusual then. But the guy was, we used to call him the son of God.
Yep, he was very good.
That's how good he was, yeah.
He was very good. I mean, people think, a lot of people now, like Horky and these guys are good racers. And believe me, they're good racers. But Maresca was totally something that, I mean...
He was an astonishing racer. He had everything about it, but of course, the Italians then had Alberto Capra.
Yep.
They had Trujillo, who's still around. They had 4 very good drivers, and that competition would no doubt help the situation.
And what was the husband and wife team?
Corina Giannotti.
Giannotti, correct. Yeah, okay.
And sadly, tragically, he was killed.
Yeah.
He fell off his roof of his factory.
Yep.
Oh.
And he seemed to be all right, and then the next day he collapsed and died. And Franco, and they won a team event in one of the Van Rossum races in Chicago, I think.
Yep, 88 or 89.
He was a beautiful lady.
Yes.
No doubt about it. She was good, but he was very friendly. I got to know the Italians very well, and I took a few trips out there. And one time I got a call from Montiglio. He was another, by the way, we should mention Joel, because he lived in England for a while and spoke perfect English, and he was really very much an ambassador for the early days of the UES and then going on to ISRA. And he rang me one day and said, "You're going to come on a motorboat, a retro motorboat." So we went on a Lake Aganda.
Like Aganda.
Yeah. And we on this motorboat with wine, and we had a picnic on the boat, and we took us all the way around Lake Garda. It was absolutely superb. And I had some brilliant times racing all over the world, and that was one of the memories I have, and particularly with Franco. He wasn't as good a racer. He wasn't quite in the very top bracket, but he developed a lot of good chassis, actually. He had a laser cut production chassis, which was absolutely fantastic for its time, but was never sanctioned because it was actually laser cut.
Right.
And it was also a time when I think I was listening to one of your programs where you were talking about the very early chassis with the introduction of GPR Van Rossum.
Right.
And what he was trying to get a simple production chassis going, and he had a thing with Limpac and close up. I didn't know all of that stuff till I listened to your show, so there's a plug for it. You learn a lot.
Opening the eyes.
Yeah.
So you've been racing for over 50 years, and you've traveled the world, and you're still winning races all the time, So I guess my question for you is, you've raced for a long time. Do you think that stock racing, even though there might be less competitors now, do you think the racing is still as competitive as it was years ago?
Well, I think in England, if I take England for an example, we had most of the legends of slot racing. I mean, of course, history always brings the legend, but we had a higher top-level base of drivers in the 80s, the 70s and the 80s, but we had more people racing then, so I suppose that would go. In England at the moment, we have a guy called James Cleave, who without doubt, I mean, he's won over 25 national titles now. He's about 10 ahead of every other person in history, and the guy is phenomenal. And yet he doesn't prepare his own motors necessarily. Dave Harvey at 101 does his motors for him. He's not the complete, builder, but he is certainly the complete driver. Incredible driver. He's competitive everywhere he goes, and he's got himself into a position where it's very difficult to see anyone challenging him. Gavin Wills, he's got a friend called Gavin Wills who does Formula 3 real car racing. He has a car factory in Rockingham, and actually the British Slot Car Racing Association, his home's going to be in this guy's factory. He's built a men's aisle on the top floor, and he has the track, an 8-lane track there, and all the facilities to stage all the national events and everything. So it's a step forward for the British Slot Car Racing Association to have the track in one venue. But in terms of drivers themselves, it's lacking. We're going to see with this event, ISRA event over the next week, how James does, because James is attending. It will be interesting to see how his performance relates, because this really is a tough call. To get into the semi-final, when you've got 120 drivers and there's only 24 make the semi-final, is tough.
Yep.
Right.
So we're going to find out a few things. I think obviously the Czechs are dominating everything really, and it's their background, technical, continue to improve every aspect of the slot car that makes them, bringing out new chassis, trying new different ideas. The production chassis now, the JK chassis designed by Retcheck, they are fabulous. I've got a Tottenham retro car there with a 26 turns of 26 in with radial magnets, the whole shooting match. And I can do 4 seconds round R81, and the production chassis will go 3.8.
Right.
With a Group 12 motor. Yeah.
Right.
So are you somebody that enjoys the racing, or do you get more interested in the building and working on the cars, or do you just?
I get the buzz out of racing. At the moment you're saying I'm winning. The reality is that because I've come down, if you like, a couple of divisions. There's not many retro racers in our country who had the experience I've had.
Right.
Particularly in building, and more so now because I'm building continuously. I've built probably a couple of 100 chassis now in the last 2 years. So every time I build, I change things around. I'm trying new ideas. And each time, sometimes I get a result. Sometimes it changes the way I look at the chassis. But the basic chassis stays the same. Rather than keep on going out and trying all these various designs, you could try Tony P's, you could try what I call the guy in Jersey, New Jersey, John Molyneux, is it? Yep. Molyneux? Yeah.
Jersey John.
Yeah, the big man. Yeah.
The big man.
So you come around in circles, but you end up with what works. And I think the great thing at nearly 70 is that I'm putting in fastest laps. I mean, that is on tracks I don't race on. I'm beating guys on their own track and doing fastest laps. And, the winning is there, but the actual satisfaction from that is very good.
So if you were to give James Cleave your backup retro car, would he whip you?
Well, it depends on what track.
Okay.
I mean, at Rockingham, he probably would, because Rockingham is a track he races on. He's his home track. He's actually a member of the Luton Slot Car Club, but he races at Rockingham. I did actually beat him. I lent him a Formula 1 on one occasion, and I beat him good. But,
okay.
So how do your retro cars differ from our retro cars here?
Well, because we are racing on flat tracks without banking, and there's more of a handling element. I mean, I was just describing on Facebook to a guy who asked a question this morning, and said I had a picture of 3 Formula 1 cars I built on International Scratch Building, I think it was, and I just got lucky that 3 guys wanted Formula 1 cars built, so I built the 3 Formula 1 cars simultaneously. One with a 2-rail, one with a Z-rail, 3-rail design, and one with 4 18-gauge rails. And I go to the track and try them. And the feature of the 2-rail one, which is actually the one I chose to race this season, was that it was about 10 grams heavier than what I'd been building cars before.
So what kind of motors do you run in your car, or your retro?
We run Hawk 7s.
Hawk 7s, okay.
We're allowed to run Hawk 7s, but we can run retro Hawks as well.
Yeah, but
or Falcon, but we race with Hawk 7.
yeah, they're faster.
Yeah. Well, they are slightly faster, but not that much in it, actually. But hey, and that's what we race with. And they are fine. They give you good racing. You get the odd dud one, but, and there was a bit of a debate going on Facebook a few weeks ago about some guys saying that, well, seal motor racing sucks. It's not there. But the reality is that, a lot of open racing sucks as well. I'm buying PK armatures for £70. That's about $90, and finding they're no good. It's like everything else. You buy your stuff in, you try, and what works at racing at the cutting edge. And the remainder of the stuff you sell off to guys who are not so experienced, who maybe don't need that 10 degrees difference in performance. And you gradually build up your fleet till you get to the point where you're happy with it. But in terms of retro racing, it's just that the skill factor comes in greater. I mean, actually, you're talking about Pat Skeen, the guy who does the Slot Car Racing News magazine, and I got him a couple of cars. I loaned him a couple of cars up in the Highlands of Scotland on an 8-lane track, and he struggled a little bit with how to drive the car. There was a significant difference he felt in driving the modern scale car of today, where, a bit like in goop racing, where you get into the corner, a lot of brakes, and then, you get round. And in fact, James Cleave is a great example of that. He has full brakes on his cars all the time. I've never known, but he's pushing it to the very extreme. But actually, Pat struggled with getting the car to flow, particularly the Tottenham car. He had trouble. I was saying, take more brakes out. He didn't want to take the brakes out,
Right.
And so it was a different feel in the way. I mean, it's something I've raced now retro for 5 or 6 years, but it suited my driving style as well, without a doubt.
Well,
I'm a smooth driver.
And see, here we run retro coupes, which is a retro car with a coupe style body.
Yeah.
And then some places will run the flexi cars with the coupe bodies and call them flexi coupes or retro flexi coupes.
Flexi GT.
Flexi. Yeah, but there's a huge difference between those cars, as far as the way they work and how deep you can drive them. And the flexi cars handle so much better. And I think it's just because there's no heavy front wheels up front.
Yeah.
Angle winder motor, but there is a difference, like you said.
Yeah, but of course, the thing I learned when I was doing international racing was, and I've used a Pro 2 now, the Czech controller, for about 15 years or more, and I always race with choking.
Okay.
With a Hawk 7. Now it sounds, people say, ridiculous.
Right.
All the performance you can get, but you get it through your relay. When you're going down straight, you're getting full speed.
Right.
So that's not a problem. So it's how you can drive the radiuses and the corners. And it was a perfect example. I raced at this 6-hour race at Clench in the south of England on a Mini King. Like I'd raced it in the 80s, only on one occasion. And I only had an hour or so of practice, and I was struggling really to get a feel for doing it in that area. I introduced 10 foot of wire choke, 10 foot of wire choke on a Falcon, Hawk 7 base motor, and the damn thing changed completely, and I won the race by 10 laps.
There you go.
So, and then the other factor was, I think I told you about this the other day, when I was over at the Viper Pit, where I met you, Ralph.
Yeah.
Mr. Tony P he took me up. We had a great weekend, and he was watching me going around the track, and he said, you're pushing it, George. Why are you pushing it so much? You're on the edge. And I said, well, when you race Eurosport 24th cars, you have to be on the edge, And I use a 82 chip just to get that feel and amount of aggression. And he said, well, I think you'd be quicker on a higher chip. So I put 127 chip in, and I went just as quick without making any mistakes. That's the thing. You balance the speed you can go at with the mistakes you're going to make. And the more you're on the edge with the controller, the more mistakes you will make.
Right.
And it's surprising. Since then, I've come back to England and I've run that for several years. And even last night, in practice, I had a 97 chip in, felt fine. Going to the race, felt a little bit aggressive. And in the warm-up, I changed to a 127 chip, and the car was perfect.
Yep.
So, there's a lot to be learned about your controllers.
Oh, yeah.
So I do know the checks always run with certainly dialed-in choke, and sometimes wire choke as well. So amazing, really. And in fact, you're talking about Southampton, where Ron, you went to. I don't know if you remember the Czechs messing around, and a guy got on to qualify, and he had a guy kneeling down below the rostrum, and what he was doing was adding the brakes at the end of the straight. But on the rest of the track, he was turning the brakes off.
Yep.
Now, actually, some drivers can actually do that.
Oh, yeah.
But it was banned anyway. There was a bit of controversy about it.
Yeah, there was a new rule.
You remember that, do you, Ron?
I remember.
Okay, so all right, explain that. What was going on now, Ron?
Well, you had the driver driving his car.
Okay.
He had his teammate or whatever down adjusting his brakes for him.
Like your
So
brake
he could go down the straightaway and he could put a brakes full on and go really deep into the turn, and then brake the brakes off for the rest of the back half of the track.
Okay.
So it's like having an assistant when you're supposed to. And I've seen guys, very few, that can actually. Jason DeHate was a guy who used to race for me. He could adjust his brakes for each turn on the track within a given lap.
Yeah.
I could not do that. I cannot adjust my controller on the fly. I have to look to see where I'm at and where I want to go.
And then when the track call comes up, you take advantage.
Yeah, but the biggest problem I see at races is guys come off and they're always fiddling with their controllers. And then they come off again and they're fiddling with their controllers. You got to find a spot and leave it there. Like you said, there's a lot to learn in your controller.
Yeah, huge amount. I mean, I for the first time ever, this year at North London, a very tight little fall-in track, and it needed a lot of brakes. And I had the Tottenham car, 27-gauge wind. It was fine, but now and again it would just pop out. And I thought, well, one of my friends, Tony James, had a car steam controller, and I had one myself. I bought one, and that's the first time I ever used it. And I changed to that, and I had, I think, left-hand setting up and the 3 others down, which is what he told me to do. And the car was transformed, and I won the race, and I never felt uncomfortable with that controller I'd never used before. So it's all about setting it up to race, not to go fast. I mean, this is the dilemma. So many people, they come off the track and I've done the fastest lap. Well, but 20 laps down.
So have you used a DeFalco or a Third Eye controller before?
Yeah, well, my memories of DeFalco, I ran the DeFalco about 1994, 95.
Yeah.
And I was leading the Eurosport 24 British National Championships till the last 8 seconds. And the DeFalco controller, I was just driving out. Charlie Gooding was right on my tail, a lap down. Going to win the title, no problem at all. And my car, the brakes failed on the DeFalco. And I hit the wall and smashed the magnets of the motor 8 seconds from home. So I still finished second. But, it really cost me a title. And after that, it was too unreliable. I don't know. This was very early days,
Right.
Early 90s. Things have changed quite a lot since then. But actually, I tried a Cobus controller not so long ago. And I really liked that. But that is sort of mega money. It's incredible amount of money.
I recently, or I don't know, maybe a year ago now, I got an S&K, and I had used a DeFalco for 15 years until I got the S&K, and I kind of like that. It's been pretty good. I don't know if you've tried one of those.
No, well, I mean, I don't know what this S&K is made, because I think it comes from Latvia, the Cobus controller.
The Ukraine, isn't it?
That's from Ukraine.
Ukraine. Is it Ukraine? Yeah. It feels beautiful, and that's got and I think the car steam now has a setting on. So when you're running Group 12, say, in England we run Group 12 Saloon 32nd, a lot of brakes on the mod with all the magnet we have now. And they have an extra setting on to take out a lot more brakes. so you can actually get the car to flow. Normally, I would just cut off some of the motor brush itself.
Right.
So I would file away some of the profile of the motor brush in contact with the commutator, so there was less brush in there, and it gave me a smoother flowing motor. It was something we had to use in those days. We had to use different methods of doing things, but we didn't have all this electronic gadgetry. But certainly now, for the average slot racer, to get a controller and work out and know instinctively what to do and how to set it up is very difficult. And the one thing that always makes me laugh is the guys who, when they come out, they suddenly look down at their controller and start changing things.
Right.
I've never understood what the hell is going. It's an excuse, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
So I think sort of, yeah.
A mental excuse to say, "Oh, geez, I've come out. It's not me. It's a controller."
Yep.
Yeah, almost certainly that is the case. But when you're talking about, I think this Cobus is somewhere in the region of £800, so it must be like $900 or more. It's an incredible amount of money.
Well, how much was your SK, Ralph?
They're like 500.
Okay.
$500.
Yeah.
Yes, £400 then roughly. Yeah.
Yeah, we're like, see, I think probably the most popular controllers here are probably the DeFalco or like a Third Eye, and like between 250 to 300 for
right
base model.
Because I've pretty much used a DeFalco for the last,
I
don't know,
you've used
10
DeFalco
years.
forever, for a while.
Well, I think the essence of the controller is feeling comfortable with it and being a part of you. And of course, for me, after 15 years of using the Pro 2, but the Pro 2 is an exceptionally good controller. There's a guy started making them again. I got the original 100 batch, and people were offering £500, for an original Pro 2.
All right.
Because the Pro 3 came out, but it was never quite as good. But it's all about your instinctive reactions as well.
Right.
The very fastest guys, you're talking about every lap you watch is virtually the same. When they're in free flow, when there's no traffic around, you watch people, he can brake on a pin, he can set the car, the laps just flow, and it just looks really good. And that's the scale which the very best racers have. And you don't go into preparation and things like that. But looking back, I really enjoyed the Van Rossen era. I was very fortunate to be invited. I was at the peak of my powers in the early 80s then, 3 or 4 national titles then. And I got invited to Chicago 2 years running, and that was a fantastic experience. Really enjoyed that. And met up with Dave Jick. I think we should talk about this young man,
Right.
Old man now. Along with Maresca, I would have to regard him as the finest driver with Maresca I've ever seen. And whereas Maresca had all the right motors, he developed the spring steel chassis which are like today.
Right.
Dave Jick's cars were very old and traditional British, and to look at them, they didn't look very good. But this guy, as Ron will testify, was an exceptional driver.
Yeah, I only see him race once, and that was at the 2002 ISRA Worlds. And he came to San Francisco, and he hadn't raced for several years as far as ISRA goes.
Yeah.
And he come in there and Storm and Norman won the Eurosport race. I mean, he was kind of underestimated. I mean, we knew he was good, but he'd had so much time off. But yeah,
well, I think it's like all sport. The problem in essence for the US is it's such a big country.
Right.
They're really, like in golf for so many years, they were leading the front runners of golf.
Right.
But of course, now we are aware that out there in the real world, they are talented people,
Yes.
And, we look at ISRA now, for instance, and we see Eastern European countries who had no access to the West and no slot racing apart from in their country. And, Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia.
Right.
These are all places now which are building up these entries to make them what they are in ISRA today.
Right.
So it's great, but the greatest thing really is we have a one formula for open racing. The world races to the same rules.
Right.
Now, I'm not so popular in England because of my political, desire to create that situation. I went in 1980 to Turin, Italy, in the European, where we had segmented racing. And I thought, wow, that really is the way to go. So I came back to the UK, and in the area racing that we did, the qualifiers for the nationals, I introduced segmented racing. And what I liked about it was the idea that every driver got the same amount of track time. Because in England we ran an outside lane, inside lane, 3 minutes, your best time counted, and it put you in groups of 4. And so you're in the top 4, you couldn't go down, you couldn't be demoted, you had to finish 4th at worst. And also the guys who are marshalling are standing there, they've had 2 3-minute heats, 6 minutes of racing. These guys are getting, semi-finals and finals, so they're getting 25 minutes racing or whatever.
Right.
And they're saying, well, what the hell should we stand around here for? So segmented racing for me is very good at local racing, so everyone gets the same amount of track time. And the top guy can end up last as well. If he retires, he ends up last. So, and equally, the guy who maybe not very good qualifying can go in and end up in a semi, entertain something and say, wow, I made a semi-final, because over the whole of the track, it's a much fairer test of the driver.
Right.
And so, but in England, not only did we have this, not unusual, just the way it happened. History developed slot racing that way, but we also allowed gooping of the track as well.
For Americans, gooping is gluing.
Gluing.
Right. So we had some of the top racers, Dave Harvey, who was an absolutely brilliant racer, and also still involved in slot racing, prepares the motors for James Cleave, and he really is a superb racer. I think he's won about 12 national titles now, but he was a leading advocate of glue racing. Right. So our 30-second cars were 130 grams, and when it came to the corner, you just applied all this glue. But the problem was he had a team to do it. He had two guys, particularly if the access around the room wasn't great, and he would have his team wiping the glue from the track from the previous guy because he had his own special formula, and he would apply it in the zones. Well, eventually they had zones. Yep. And so the next guy who came on could be a novice, and he was racing in the conditions that Mr. Dave Harvey wanted, Right. And he didn't have it. So his whole race was spoiled. So when I was in Europe, I saw the spray glue conditions in lighter cars, and I thought this is the way we had to go. But I mean, I was the Brescia area representative for years, and along with a guy called Charlie Gooding, who is a very good racer, but also he was the chairman of the association. Because of our access, particularly the Van Rossen races, we came back and said, this has to change. We can't go on racing in these conditions.
Right. And
so in 1993, we changed over to spray glue conditions. So in the long term, of course, it may have been a good thing, or may have been a bad thing. But now, we have, I suppose, Repchek Hawkey chassis or Castriconi chassis. Everyone's running roughly the same kind of chassis, really, in the same conditions. And that's, been important. So it took a long time for the UK, and I'm still have a moment. So I was at a meeting a few weeks ago, and a guy turned around and he was talking to Pat about for the magazine, and he said to me, that guy there made me stop racing for 9 years. And I looked at the guy. I've talked to the guy several times. He's never ever shown any benevolence towards me, and yet it came out in that particular moment. And he said, "You ruined slot racing in Britain." So is the headline of the next magazine going to say George Kimber killed my slot racing program? Well, there's a guy called Mike Reed, a lovely lad, a retired guy like me now, and been racing for many years. But there was another guy called Tim Ryan, and he was another good advocate. And actually, Tim Ryan was an exceptional driver. He went to the Van Rossen race and raced in wing and made the semi-finals of wing racing. at Chicago, and the guy had hardly ever raced wing.
And that was going to be one of my questions too. Did you ever race a wing car? Have you ever raced? Okay.
Yeah, I raced wing car, but not the Group 7.
Okay, because I mean, wing car racing has never been popular in the UK, and
well, it's not popular because we didn't have the
tracks
to do it. Yeah,
right.
I mean, in the Reading, I think had a 24th track with Barry McGee, who was renowned, well-known 24th racer. Tottenham for a period of time, but that was only 3 or 4 years. Tottenham was open,
right?
So, as we said, the culture was 132nd. Wing racing, I did it at R80. Well, actually, the guy who runs Raceway 81 now, Andy Brown-Searle, AB Slot Sport, he had a raceway called the Riverside Raceway, and he imported an Ogilvy 8 lane, and we raced wing. But the problem was for me is I go around the track and I come up to a back marker, and what do? Blast him off the track. Basically, you can't slow down because your downforce is gone. So you have to keep it on the throttle,
right?
And then you come off the track and the guys are looking at you saying, what a bastard he is. He's wiped me out, each time he came round. And, so it just lacked that little bit of skill in the driving area. But in the technical area, it brought out a different kettle of fish altogether, really. The cars were everything, the tires had to be spot on, everything. But obviously there's been a huge demise in wing racing in America.
Right.
And you've now got retro as the dominant retro scene, along with Flexi, I suppose.
Yeah, Flexi's still where it's at for overall, and retro's very popular in certain areas.
Yeah.
But the wing thing, I mean, just the costs have killed it.
Well, when you're changing a motor every segment of the race, and these motors are costing, well, maybe up to £200 English, or $220, $230. It's unbelievable. A long way to go, and yet, as retro racing has proved,
right,
you get just as much enjoyment out of racing with steel motor.
Right. The problem in wing cars, in my opinion, the biggest problem is just the cost of tires at $25 a pair in a pair of heat. If you don't bend a hub, so you've got $200 in tires just to run 8 heats.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Well, the whole thing is just you could say the same about ISRA now as well, couldn't you? In terms of
I mean, to a certain degree,
what it costs.
Right.
You're really up in the I don't know. We're talking £300 for a slot car.
But I think when you got 120 plus people standing in line to go to the race, I don't think it's a big problem.
It says it all.
Right.
It's a marvelous thing for slot racing that we have a uniformity across the globe. Brilliant. We couldn't say it more.
The ISRA race gets no higher tech. I mean, it's at the highest technological level you can be at. Okay. And you've got a race that's full and people still wanting to go that can't go because, I mean, that's like, and it's expensive, but
people want to do it,
Right.
And that is the thing with associations around the world. When I was the chairman of the British Slot Racing Association for about 4 years, and I tried to, because I've always thought, we need more people racing.
Right.
If I go to an English event, I go to a lot of events, you see guys who are in their 50s, 60s. What about next 10 years? Where are these racers going to come from? And we get a filter of young people coming through, but, they get to the point where they're dating and drinking beer and having a good time, and somehow along the way, they lose their interest.
Well, I call that the fumes, gas fumes and perfumes. See, so
Very dangerous cocktail.
how did you survive, Ralph? Was you in slot car racing, then learn about the fumes, or was the fumes before you started slot car racing?
I mean, I don't know. I think.
When did you start racing, Ralph? How old were you?
12, maybe.
Oh, he survived the fumes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I did both for a while.
Dangerous, intoxicating things, those fumes. It's amazing, really, that in England, even segmented racing, they didn't want to do that, really. And I introduced it when I was a chairman. I decided I had enough of there's all this democracy and people voting on everything,
Right.
So I introduced segmented racing for Eurosport 32, the Nationals, for the first time on my own bat with the help of Brian Saunders. He backed me on it and said, listen, we've got to do it. I've got letters from people, you're breaking the rules of, the association and all this cobblers. And they actually raced it. And I asked for a survey afterwards to find out across the board over the 50 drivers who had entered what they thought of segmented racing.
Right.
And it was, probably 35 people were saying, yeah, it's great. We get more track time. We really enjoy it. And then the top elite drivers preferred it the other way. So
right.
When you're running an association, it's very difficult to bring in new classes, new formula, new changes if everyone is voting on it, because invariably the top guys influence the middle order races, so you don't get any change. You don't try new initiatives.
Right.
That's one of the elements of it.
And the elite had the advantage of the way it was. That's why they didn't want it changed.
Yeah.
Well, that's right. But also the elite, the guys who turned up. So that is a dilemma facing all people who are trying to administer slot racing, is that we can only really go on we can't make the rules for the people who don't turn up. We've got to make them, or the format of racing for the people who do turn up.
Right.
And so it's a very difficult situation, and that's why slot racing, but I suppose, it's like you look at Formula One all those years with Bernie, he decided that went through.
Right. But at the end of the day, the changes you made has kept the UK competitive in the international scene.
Yes, exactly. Well, we would have been, just in terms of what produced the technical gear, the chassis, the motors, the kind of wines we use. The Italians were the first in the mid-'80s to start getting lower timed armatures done by ProSlot through a lady that became a man that became a lady.
Who was that?
That was Maro Magnani.
Oh.
I met him in the 1980s, a grizzly Italian-style gentleman.
Okay.
In 1987, lo and behold, this beautiful lady came up to me and said, "Hi, George." And I said, "Hello, I'm not saying, I don't think I've had the pleasure." To which she said, "Well, you met me, 6 years ago or 7 years ago." I said, "Well, I'm dumbfounded, really." And it turned out she'd had a sex change.
Okay.
She was a very wealthy lady who produced commutators. They made commutators for domestic products like hoovers and all the electrical stuff you use in the home. And so she was pretty wealthy, and she'd gone through this transgender, as they call it now.
Right.
So that's a one-off, that one.
And for you Americans, Hoover is a vacuum cleaner.
That's right. That's a generic.
Right.
Name. Yeah. Like Ski Electric is slot racing.
Right.
Yeah.
Ron, do you have anything? And I don't want to cut you off, George, but I think we have some stuff we were going to want to give away, right?
Yes, we have a couple of items this week.
Okay.
Mill Conroy, and I
know about.
Huh?
I know about Mill. He's the man at BPR, isn't he?
Yes, and you'll get to meet him pretty soon because
I'm going to be meeting him soon. Yeah,
you're heading that way. But Mill has made this tire magic kind of tire treatment compound. So he's graciously donated 2 bottles to give away to 2 lucky winners.
Like I've won that. Sounds like I've already won that.
Well, I'm sure he'll probably have a bottle for you when you get there. So
yeah, don't worry, Ron.
All right. So the first winner is Charles Eldridge.
Wow, Charles Eldridge.
Which he's from North Carolina, right, Ralph?
I believe so, yeah.
Because we raced with him down there. And our second winner is Ralph Middaugh.
There you go.
Which he lives in Ohio, and we raced with him. So those are the winners of Mills Tire. I think he actually has Mills Blue Magic.
Wow.
Blue Magic.
I've had Purple Magic before, but
have you ever heard of koala claws?
Yeah, I think
I have. Yeah,
I have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I've seen AB Slot Sport advertise.
Yeah, well, actually, it does work because I was at the British Open Championship racing a Eurosport 24th car last year, and I set up a few pairs of tyres, and one pair of tyres were very, very good, but they were on the margin where they would last the race. So I was borrowing Pat's car, actually, Pat's scheme, and he had 3 other sets of tyres, but the car was totally different in the donut. Couldn't go through the donut in the way it did with this one pair of tyres. And I actually used some koala claws on those tyres, and it made the car slide a little bit more, and it went quicker, and it was perfect. So it does actually work, but I'm not really inclined to use. I like to clean tyre and use spray glue, So
we talked about that a show ago. If you're cleaning your tires and adding glue and doing this, it's kind of a desperation moment.
Yes, exactly. Well, but of course, in the donut area, I mean, it'll be like a lot of the king tracks, I suppose. The donut is the fundamental speed where you gain the advantage,
right?
And his car has to go through there in virtually a one blip, as it were.
Right.
And this koala claws made the car slide a bit because the buildup of grip in that donut was tremendous. So the koala claws just allowed the car to slide a little bit and made the difference. So
it wasn't really a clawing effect; it was a sliding effect.
It was a sliding effect, yeah. But he also has a treatment of his tires now, which I don't know what he uses in. So what kind of perfume?
Yeah.
Root.
Remember High Karate?
Well, they're all pretty good. All give you a kick.
Yeah. High Karate.
Well, yeah, great.
Okay. Well, it was a pleasure having you on the show.
Yeah. Thank you very much,
gentlemen. And it's nice to think that I spent my whole life enjoying myself,
right?
Passion, and still doing it, and I'm really. It'd be worth a mention. Next week will be the final round of the ISRA Championship next week at Rockingham, and if I behave myself, I might win it.
You might, or you will.
Well, there's 2. Well, it's very close. I've had 3 breakdowns.
Oh.
My actual results.
Oh, your gears.
I've had the gear situation. Yeah. In fact, last night I tried a BSV gear last night, and that was on a JK straight pinion. A 48 pitch, and that was fine. The mesh felt good. Didn't feel so good on the track, but it felt good, turning it. So I've had 3 breakdowns. I'm going to win Tottenham because all results are fine for that, and I'm going to probably win Formula One. But there's a couple of home drivers who will be contesting it, and so we'll see how we do against those guys. It's a very difficult track to get round, it's an advantage having the home knowledge. So we'll see. But, if the guy beats me overall, then so be it.
Well, good luck, and I hope you have a great time.
Yeah,
sure, guys. It was a pleasure to come on and give a few of my experiences. And I had a ball.
Well, I'm sure at some point we can have a George Kimber Part 2 or Return of George, so...
Yeah.
Well, if you ever need a deputy.
Well, before we go, Ron, you got to tell us what's the secret word of the show.
The secret word of the show. I thought about that earlier when George had mentioned something. So, and then I should have wrote it down, but I totally spaced it now. So, let's just say the secret word is goop.
All right. I was gonna suggest that if you didn't have one, actually.
We got, we were talking goop, and then we got Mills Tire goop. So, actually Blue Magic, but it was kind of a goopy show.
Well, I'll probably get a chance to try some when I'm in California in about 2 weeks' time.
Okay.
Well, good luck. Yeah, have fun on your trip. Good luck at your race coming up.
Yep.
And again, thank you very much for coming on. And
it was a pleasure, gentlemen, and really nice to catch up with my American slot racing friends.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
So,
thank you, George. We do appreciate it.
No problem.
Just hang in there for a second. We're going to shut this down. So,
right.
But, any words of wisdom, Ralph, before we go?
I'm out of wisdom, but I do want to try. But I do want to encourage everybody, if you haven't done so, please like our Facebook page, our YouTube page, and share it and comment it and let us know what you think. And if you have any questions, send us a message or leave a comment with a question. We'll try to get to them on the next show.
Okay. And everybody going racing this weekend, have fun, good luck, be safe, and good luck to everybody at ISRA. I don't know if they'll be seeing this or not, but we'll have more to report next week.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, guys. See
Thanks,
you on
George.
episode 10.
See you, everybody.